WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Hello, J.W. Simmons here. We Should Know is on the air, the name of the show. My name is J.W. Simmons again, and I want to just remind folks that each and every Tuesday we come to you with a new subject, individuals that have information, expertise in specific areas that maybe you need to know about or maybe you just haven't thought about. And this show today is so critically important. I want to say up front, call a neighbor or a friend and tell them to tune in. This may be something that could literally save your life. We're talking with Erick Herring. Erick is the Division Chief EMS right here in Sampson County. Erick, 32 years. You've been involved in public service in some aspect of emergency response. Back during those days, long time ago, you were with fire service and volunteer fire department. You moved right up that, I'll call it the food chain, and ended up in Emergency Operations Center right here in Sampson County. Not only did you do that, but you got your paramedic license, which is the top of the scale for emergency response for medical stuff.
That's correct. And
now you're the chief division operations there at the EMS office and have a number of paramedics that work with you throughout the county. Thank you for being with us.
I appreciate you having me.
Sometimes it's just good when, and I'll say this on air, it's just good sometimes when folks see people like you that have literally devoted their life to serving the public right here in this area. And I don't think it would bother you a bit if somebody just come up and said, thank you for what you're doing.
No, we appreciate the accolades that we get, and but it's just not me. We've got multiple people throughout this county that have devoted their entire life, to emergency services in one way or fashion, whether it's fire, EMS, law enforcement. So this county is real fortunate with a lot of great people, that have devoted their entire life to taking care and looking after our citizens of the county.
One of the things I wanted to do kind of first up this morning, and just for the folks listening and watching, I want to talk a lot about summertime accidents and those kinds of things. But before we get into that, and maybe we can take this first segment to talk about the operations itself, the oversight you have at EMS literally addresses a lot of those critical areas that goes into play when somebody out there is in that dire need that they dial 911 and that call goes in. Let's start from there and kind of explain to folks what happens when somebody dials that number.
Okay. Basically, when someone in the county dials 911, they'll receive an operator in our 911 dispatch center. They're going to start asking the caller a lot of questions. They're basically trying to figure out what is going on, what's wrong with the patient. But in the meantime, once they get figured out what the type of emergency is, there may be something that they're going to be able to tell the caller to do to help the patient to start, potentially life-saving measures before, we're ever even dispatched. At the same time, you got one caller that's taking that information and talking to the caller and giving instructions as to what to do and how to do. We've also got someone else that's go ahead and getting the emergency response activated, whether it's the fire department, law enforcement, EMS, getting us en route at simultaneously as the initial dispatcher is potentially telling life-saving skills that someone could do.
One of the things that strikes me, and I want to back up just for a minute, because oftentimes when I'm talking to folks, they get a little concerned because clearly if somebody dials 911, something very serious has happened. It's their family, it's a traffic accident, it's something, and it's a very hyper tense moment for them. And the dispatcher literally has a process, and I'm going to call it a series of content questions that they ask. And sometimes people will say, well, why do they do that? I'm trying to tell them where they're at, and they're just asking me these questions. But we're talking about training that they've had. These people
Correct.
go through kind of, I guess, state and national accreditation training. But why is that important? And explain the question process.
The question process is to help identify exactly what is going on, to also help identify the exact resources that will be needed to handle whatever type of situation it is. But once they can get that information identified, then that assists them in knowing what to tell the caller that they can start doing to help the patient. You know, and a lot of people do get aggravated. You know, why are they asking me all these questions? Just send the ambulance or send the police officer or send the fire truck. Well, depending upon the situation, you know, obviously if a law enforcement officer is responding to a call, he wants to know what he's going into. Do we need is one officer able to handle it? Do we need 2 or 3 officers? Same with the fire department. You know, do we need 1 fire department? Do we need 2 fire departments? You know, because different situations is going to dictate a different response from, you know, law enforcement, fire departments, EMS. Prime example, you know, someone calls fire department for a vehicle fire. We may dispatch 1 fire department. If that vehicle is sitting in your garage or next to your house and catching your house on fire, we're going to go ahead and dispatch it as a structure fire. Or endangering a structure. So that's going to get a multi-agency response versus just 1 fire department going. We're going to try and get the correct amount of resources en route initially, and so hopefully we can stay, you know, somewhat ahead of the 8 ball there and not get a single fire truck on scene and realize now that the whole house is on fire and I need additional help. You know, we're going to try and get them up front. Same thing with EMS and the ambulance. You know, the vast majority of our calls, 1 truck can handle it. Our trucks, we've got 2 people on each truck. You know, the vast majority of them, 1 truck can handle it. But depending upon the situation, if it's a cardiac arrest situation, we're going to send multiple trucks. We need more than 2 people on scene to be able to manage and to handle that incident. So we try to be proactive and think ahead and you know, get the correct amount of resources en route to start with. That is why a lot of those questions are being asked. Again, those questions will help the dispatcher understand and realize what's going on and let the dispatcher know what type of answers or instructions I can give the caller to start doing to maybe potentially help the patient. You know, and it's kind of like I've got an old saying that, you know, I'd rather have it, not need it, than to need it, not have it. You know, so we can get our resources en route, and if the first unit arrives on scene and realizes that, hey, I can handle it with just what we've got here, then they'll cancel everybody else.
One of the things I think that oftentimes and I'm not sure about this, so I'm going to ask the question so we can clarify. Can the dispatcher, as they're asking those questions, go ahead and dispatch you or somebody? And does people need to understand that maybe somebody already on the way and they're still trying to get information that they can feed back to you?
Very much so. In our dispatch center, we've got 4 911 dispatchers in our dispatch center. So a lot of times while someone's talking to you on the telephone, gaining information from you, someone else in another chair over here is already getting the proper responders on the way.
Wheels are moving.
Wheels are moving, right. While before your 911 call is ever completely finished, odds are the ambulance or the fire truck or the law enforcement officer has already been dispatched and en route before you ever hang up the phone with, from the 911 center.
And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that 911 center because I think it's important now, because we've seen in the news media recently where some large cities is having some problems. I won't get into calling names of the towns where apparently they don't have enough dispatch people. Folks will call 911 and some reports are saying anywhere from a minute or longer to get somebody to answer the phone. We've never really had that issue here, have we?
No, and I'm not over the 911 center, so I don't want to.
You interact with it.
I interact with them, and but I think on an average, and I may be telling you incorrectly here, but I think on an average, within 30 seconds or less, someone's answered the phone in our 911 center. And it may be even closer to 15 seconds of time the first phone rings to the time someone answers it. So I don't know that specific number, but it's relatively quick. But we do not have the problem that, where I have heard of larger cities or different places where someone calls 911 and it just rings and rings and rings and no one answers it. We've been fortunate so far, and we're not at that point.
I'll probably get some feedback on this observation, but I'm just thinking here, if somebody has a issue and they have to dial 911, obviously we'll agree that the person is kind of very agitated, they're excited.
Right.
Should they have a kind of a mindset of the kinds of things that dispatcher needs to know, like location, where they call him from, what kind of issue it is it a heart attack, is it somebody drowned in, is it somebody fell off of a truck, whatever it is? Do they need to understand that's what they're going to want to know?
Right, they do. Some of the very first couple or three questions that is going to be asked is just verifying the caller's name, verifying that callback number, just in the event, whatever happens, the phone call gets dropped, verifying the address. When you dial 911 from a landline telephone, it automatically populates on the computer screen your address, your name, your callback information. However, I will say that all that information has been entered manually through the phone company, so there is, the potential for error there. So they're going to verify, hey, this is J.W. Simmons. They're going to verify your phone number that you're calling from. In case the call gets dropped, we can call you back, verify the address and such as that.
We're going to take a quick break and come back. I want to pick up from there. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Erick Herring, Chief Operations EMS right here in Sampson County. Stay tuned, call a friend.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. J.W. Simmons here. Thank you for being with us today. It's Tuesday, every Tuesday at 2:30. We come to you on Star Communications, simulcast on WCLN Radio. Our guest today is Erick Herring, Chief Operations Officer right here in Sampson County. Paramedics, fire service, all of those sounds, noises, and bells we hear, somewhere in that chain of events, you pop up. And oftentimes it may be at the first point that happens because you're looking at the entire scope. We were talking, Erick, as we went to break about the call when it goes in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you mentioned I wanted to follow up on is that call when it goes in. You mentioned that dispatcher can see where that call's coming from. I've had folks to mention this to me in the past that oftentimes if they make a mistake, and I guess somebody does, that call shows on the screen, that dispatcher's going to follow up with that.
They will. We get a lot of 911 hang-ups in Sampson County, and obviously a lot of them with our 910 area code. Right. 911 area code just, not far from us. People are making a lot of calls in 910, 919. So they inadvertently hit 911. So we do get a lot of 911 hang-up calls. If you do happen to accidentally call 911, a lot of people think, oh shoot, I've called 911, I didn't mean to, let me try and get hung up real fast. So they're trying to hung up. Well, I can guarantee you that you're not going to get hung up. It's ringing on their end, and a half a phone ring in the 911 center, and it populates there that somebody's called 911. If you've hung up, they're going to call you back. That's their policy. 911 center calls back just to confirm that everything's okay, you don't need any assistance. So, kind of with that said, if you do accidentally call 911, it's no big deal. Stay on the phone and just tell them, hey, I'm sorry, it's an accidental dial, no harm, no foul. Because what'll happen if you hang up and they try to call you back and they cannot get you, they're going to send a sheriff deputy out or a police officer out to just check and verify that everything's okay.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because oftentimes folks do think that there may be some kind of problem with them, or somebody may come out and say, well, you messed up, we're going to charge you a fine or something. It don't happen. So the best thing is just say, hey, I was dialing whatever and I hit 911, sorry, blah, blah, blah. If they don't, and you send somebody out, that's taking up time that is really not needed.
It is, and additional, it's taking up resources and time. That officer may be having to go to your house to check to be sure that you're okay or don't need anything. And if he knew that everything was okay, he may could have been responding to another call.
And you just mentioned something. I'm going to follow that thread right there. You mentioned resources and time. We live, as everybody knows that's listening today, we live in a rural area. We don't have the density of population of Raleigh and Greensboro and places, but we do have a large land mass. And one of the things that we have, and I want you to kind of get into the structure a little bit of the way you guys have the county set up with response. We've heard terms like QRVs, quick response vehicles. We've heard the terms, paramedics. And then we've heard the term that there's other folks that may be like assistant or that kind of EMTs, EMTDs, and all that kind of thing. Help us understand how we're structured here to get people the quickest service possible with the highest level of professionalism and credentials.
Okay. All of our Sampson County EMS employees, our paid employees, anytime someone calls 911 for a medical emergency, we're going to dispatch a paramedic level unit. Sampson County EMS, we are certified at paramedic level. We do have volunteer squads throughout the county, 6 volunteer squads. They're either at the EMT basic level or advanced EMT level. The EMT, advanced EMT, and paramedic level are your 3 pre-hospital levels that the state of North Carolina recognize, and basically say that if you operate an ambulance, you've got to be certified at one of these 3 levels. All of our Sampson County ambulances, Sampson County EMS ambulances, are paramedic level. Our volunteer squads, again, are either EMT level or advanced EMT level. So when someone calls 911 for a medical emergency, we're going to dispatch a paid EMS unit, a paramedic, to every single call. That paramedic's going to get on the scene and evaluate. And we may have a dual response where our volunteer goes as well, depending on where the paid truck's coming from. If that volunteer gets on the scene with their volunteer truck and they've evaluated the patient and determined and deemed that, okay, by protocol, we can handle this patient. This patient does not need a paramedic. They can cancel the paramedic truck respond to a different call. If get on scene and determine that, hey, we do need the paramedic, that paramedic's going to continue on and will take up patient care once they get on the scene. And vice versa, sometimes we'll have our paramedic trucks will get on the scene to start with. They'll evaluate the patient. If a volunteer truck is able to come and they show up and our paramedic determines that, hey, this is a basic level call, or this basic squad can handle it and do the transport, our paramedic will turn that patient over to the basic level squad and let them do the transport to the hospital. Our paramedic truck can go back in service. Paramedics being the highest pre-hospital level certification that the state of North Carolina recognizes, we can administer a lot more medications and do a lot of additional skills that our basic partners or our advanced EMT partners, cannot perform.
So it's interesting, and I'm going to kind of spend a little bit of time on this. Each one of these areas that you just mentioned are state certified areas, which means that the state of North Carolina has to sign off on that person
Correct.
that they have met the requirements both in training and experience to actually function in that area. And that's something that is kind of not necessarily in the local control. In other words, a local person can't come in and say, I'm just going to make you a paramedic.
Correct.
You've got to be like any other paramedic in the state of North Carolina. I mean, if you were in Greensboro, that paramedic in Greensboro, and you've got the same
same training, same certification. We get, predominantly in Sampson County, obviously we get our training through Sampson Community College. They offer, the EMT basic course, advanced EMT course, the paramedic level course. Once you go through that training, the course, you have to take a North Carolina state certified exam for whatever level certification you're, going to school for. You take that state certified exam once, and it's the same. If I take a paramedic level exam through the state of North Carolina, I'm in Sampson County, but it's the same exact exam that someone in Charlotte takes, or
Raleigh,
Wake County
or
takes, or wherever. So once you get your state certification, then you can start functioning. North Carolina Office of EMS mandates that every ambulance in the state has to have at least 2 certified people on that truck, one of which has to be certified at the level that the truck is certified through the North Carolina Office of EMS at.
So basically, maybe if it's certified paramedic, there's got to be a certified paramedic.
At least one paramedic on that truck, yes, sir.
How important is it, and you mentioned this volunteers, so I'm going to follow that a minute. How important is it for us to still have those volunteer squads out there, from not only from your perspective, but from your experience?
Our volunteers are extremely important to us. I started in volunteers. That's where my roots are: volunteer fire service and volunteer EMS rescue. They're extremely important to us. Getting someone, especially someone coming in at 17, 18, 19 years old, and getting them involved with the volunteer service, that helps build their mindset, and potentially they may think, I may want to go this career path, or as a career field. By them joining the volunteer squad, they get to do the same functions essentially that you do on the paid side, and they can see that, I do like this. I do want to make this a career. Or they may get to doing it and say, this is not for me. I don't want to do this as a career. So before they get a lot of time and effort spent in making it a career, and then deciding that, hey, this is not what I want, but our volunteers, a lot of our paid employees have come up through the volunteer ranks. So it's kind of a stepping stone, to getting your foot into a paid system and making a career out of it.
These jobs, the job that you're in, and with your experience level, it strikes me it just takes a kind of a special person to say, I want to dedicate my career path to doing a job that sometimes is not recognized, but oftentimes everybody understands how critical it is. But you guys are out there in all kinds of weather, whether it's hurricanes or whatever. But when that call comes in your position, you're responsible for making sure that somebody goes.
Right.
Does it concern you at times that maybe you don't have enough people to get to certain areas? And I'm leading this question in as we're fixing to go to a break in just a minute, so we can loop back into it. Does that concern you at all? And what is the biggest concern? Is we don't have enough paramedics? Do we need more vehicles? Do we sometimes miss people? Do we have people that the call comes in, it's dispatched, but there's just nobody to go?
Right. We, I think we hit on it a few minutes ago about how large Sampson County is, and that is a lot of our problem, the land mass. So it takes time to get from point A to point B in Sampson County.
Let's break on that. I want to come back and pick that up from there, because I think that's critical enough that folks needs to understand that.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about serious issues that may face you when you dial 911. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
At home or away, knowing who is at your door is priceless. Star Communications is here to help with its doorbell security camera by Skybell. Live viewing and two-way audio equips you with the ability to always see and greet anyone that shows up at your door. If this is the kind of confidence you are looking for, call Star Communications today at 1-800-706-6538 to learn more about this intelligent security that you can always depend on.
Welcome back. We Should Know's on there. J.W. Simmons here, your host. I'm talking with Erick Herring, Chief Operations, Sampson County EMS. Erick, as we went to break, we were talking about the response, and to some degree, I wanted to kind of work into response time. But in Sampson County, as you look at the areas that, and you really are responsible for the entire county, and to make sure that somebody is there, whether I happen to be in Ivanhoe, Delway, Newton Grove, Plainview community. We're talking a county 72 miles from one end to the other. Does it give you some concern sometimes in the sense of knowing that you might have that time that it might not be, the call may be answered, the response may not be as quick as that call getting answered is what I'm trying to get to here.
Right.
Help us understand what you see from where you sit that concerns you most.
I think, ensuring that we do have enough resources and available resources to respond as quickly and appropriately as possible. With Sampson County being as large as it is, obviously, landmass wise as large as it is, it takes some time to get an ambulance from this location to that location. Unfortunately, we don't have the tax base that, our Wake County may have, Charlotte may have, or whatever. So we don't have ambulances sitting on every corner. And that, we were talking just a minute ago about the 911 calls and the questions being answered and asked. That is partially why some of those questions are asked as well, to ensure that, if our resources are running thin, that we send the closest ambulance to the call that is most severe first. We prioritize our calls. If we got two calls that's sitting right here and one of them appears to be a true emergency, somebody in cardiac arrest or something, we're going to send the closest truck to that call. Even though this call over here may have come in first, it may just be somebody sick, not feeling well. We're going to the cardiac arrest first. So, some of those questions tie in as to which call we're going to respond to first. But with Sampson County as large as it is, it's hard to have enough resources to, have a truck on every corner. And we were speaking as our volunteers, how important are they to us? They augment us and support us. That just gives us additional resources. And if we respond to a call and it's a basic level call, and we can give that call, to the volunteer to do the transport to the hospital, our paramedic truck can go back in service, or our paramedic truck can respond to that traffic accident or that cardiac arrest, or someone having a stroke, or more significant type call.
Would you say our volunteers are critical assets in the community?
Very much so, very much so. And then speaking on that, I can guarantee you that all of our volunteers or volunteer squads, they're looking for help. Anybody that thinks you might be interested in helping or looking a way to help your community, if I would encourage you to, check with Sampson Community College, maybe get into the EMT basic program, get your certification, and join a volunteer squad and help your community and your county out.
And I look at it as I remember, it's not cost prohibitive for somebody to get in. I mean, I guess the only thing it would cost them is their time.
Correct. It would cost them their time. Someone can join a volunteer squad, and most squads, they'll go ahead and put you on without a certification, get your foot in the door. And as long as you're a member of that volunteer squad, you can take the class through Sampson Community College for free.
That's pretty big. That's pretty huge, especially the state of North Carolina. And I always kind of like to hear somebody tout that as being important. We've spent a lot of time, and it's important that we talk about not only the system that you look at and operate on a daily basis, but how critical it is. I do want to kind of segue into the whole idea of some of the things you face during the summertime. Typically, all the data that I've looked at, it's like summertime brings on a whole new peripheral of things that happen, everything from, and I'll throw out snake bites to drownings to, I think before we went on air, we were just talking about it's kind of more of a laid back time of the year. And now you guys are facing that we're coming out of a pandemic and everybody's really been kind of, to some degree, shut in for a whole year. And people are expressing themselves.
Oh, yeah.
First up, the question would be, what are some of the things that concern you most with summertime, some of the preventable accidents that you see happening, that maybe you could fill us in on? With your 32 years of experience, we could probably be here another 4 or 5 hours just talking about things you've seen, but just hit some of those key points that people really need to think about before they do.
One of the things that a lot of times we think about during the summer is obviously our water emergencies, drownings. People are getting their pools ready and everybody's enjoying the pools, everybody's enjoying the lakes, the ponds, and everybody's going fishing and such. Fortunately, we don't have a whole lot of drownings in Sampson County, but we do have them. I think we had 3, if I remember correctly, in 2020. But I think a lot of times we've got to, when we get that pool ready and we've got small children at our house, we need to do things to safeguard that pool from that small child, whether it's a fence, a gate, a door locked, or whatever. We can't take our eyes off our kids, our toddlers, even just for 2 or 3 minutes and they're gone. And, 2 or 3 minutes, and I've got kids of my own or adult kids now, but I know when they were small, it's easy to get distracted and take your eyes off of them for 2 or 3 minutes. And next thing you know, fortunately most that mine ever did was get over there and mark on the wall or something, didn't get in a pool. But it is easy for, kids are curious, most kids like water, they like to swim. And, so they may say, well, let me go to this pool, and they fall in and they don't know how to swim, especially your toddlers. Another thing that I think we run across some, summertime, people are outside more, whether it's, at the pond fishing or the lake, or, we're down at the river fishing, and a lot of people are partying and drinking alcohol, and, we've had a little bit too much to drink, and then we get out in the boat and get out in the pond or get out in the river, and we turn the boat over, and now we can't get back to the bank and end up and drown. So people just need to be really mindful. If I am down at the river or at the pond and I've had some alcohol, alcohol and water don't mix.
Exactly.
So just be real mindful. And
how do you help somebody in a situation like you just described that may be there and maybe they're okay, maybe they're on the bank and somebody decided to go out on a boat and all of a sudden that person is drowned? And what do you recommend they do, obviously, other than calling 911? That's kind of a given. What can they do while you guys are getting there?
Obviously, 911's obvious answer there. But, if I'm on the bank and my buddy's in the pond and he's drowning, my best case scenario is if I've got a life jacket or something I can throw to them, or a long stick, limb, rod, rake, hoe handle, whatever, because people, when they get in water and they go to drowning, they go to panicking.
Yeah.
And so
they're grabbing for whatever.
They're grabbing for anything and everything. So if you're not extremely careful, you're going to get out there with them, and they're grabbing and trying to hold you, or get on top of you because they're trying to get their head above water. And if you're not extremely careful, instead of having one drowning, now we've got two drownings.
I think I hear a lot of that from folks like you. They say, be careful if you decide you're going to jump in, even though you can swim. You could be pulled under because they're just in a panic mode. They're
panicking, and not they're not trying to pull you under to hold you under the water and drown you by no means. But when you're panicking like that, and all you can think in your mind is, I've got to have air, I've got to get up on top so I can get air. They're doing whatever they can to get air.
There was a situation in an adjoining county just recently in which there was I think it was a father and a child, and the child ended up in the water, and apparently it appeared that the parent went in after the child, and both of them, as I recall, and I think that was on the News River or something.
I think they both end up and passed away from that, and
that's a lesson within itself.
Exactly, and it's real tragic, and and I think most any parent would probably done the same thing that parent did and jumped into water trying to get their child. But that kind of a river like that, even though it may look calm on top, the currents that are down up under the river are a lot stronger than what we realize, even though you may be a pretty strong swimmer. The current up under the top layer of surface of water is a lot stronger than we realize, and can easily pull you down and pull you in and drown you.
And the dynamic of looking at that is kind of one of the things I've heard you talk about before, is that preparation. If you're going to a place of that, keep in your mind, what is your preparation? And as you just said, not only 911, but be prepared to address these other issues that may come up in that, because it's an uncontrolled environment when you're talking about a river.
It is. It's very uncontrolled and unpredictable and unforgivable.
I want to go to break here in just a second, but when we come back, I want to explore some other issues, not only that typically you see in summertime, but that you can recall that you face. So we're going to come back in just a moment. I want to kind of use that, folks, for you to stay tuned to this last segment. We're just going to kind of jump into that big area of summertime accidents, and maybe we'll touch on something you've been thinking about. We'll be back in a moment. Call a friend.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Welcome back, folks. We Should Know is on the air. This is one of those shows that goes fast. A lot of our shows do. We're coming up on the last segment. Do want to communicate you the importance again of your feedback and information on what we're doing here. The kind of subjects, the people we have on, we look for folks that have not only the background, but the expertise to speak to you directly about things that may impact your life. Just as today's show impacts your life as it relates to emergencies, other shows and things that you've recommended to include people, we've been more than pleased to do that. We encourage you to reach us at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Relatively easy to remember, a lot of letters, but just simply the name of the show, We Should Know, plug in EDU with it, and the rest of it just kind of fills in the blank itself. We should know edu@gmail.com. If you want to reach us and just drop us a card, or you're not into the computer business and you don't want to get into that, you drop us a card to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina, 28328. And as always, we'll try to reach back out to you and let you know where we're at, what we're doing. And again, this is my way of, in case I've missed anybody, to let you know that we do look at that and we very much support you and reaching out to us and letting us know. Today we're talking with Erick Herring. Erick, I think I've said this a couple times and back, going back to intro, but you are the chief operations person there. You've got a number of paramedics, a number of trucks that you have oversight. You got something called QVRs that may have you or some other supervisors that operate those. And it's the first word in that is quick. That means that person may roll up on the scene. So if somebody calls and they see a person pull up in a vehicle and it's just one person, don't think that this person's not well trained.
Right, correct. They're actually called QRVs, quick response vehicles. Essentially, those vehicles have one person in them, but it will be a paramedic. We do operate a couple of them, and we try to station that truck where we don't have an ambulance stationed at, or kind of between a couple ambulances or something, that kind of fill in the gap, so to speak. Likewise, our supervisors are on quick response vehicles as well. All of them. We've got all the same medications, equipment. We can do everything as far as treatment-wise out of that vehicle. The only thing we can't do is transport you. So we can get on the scene with that vehicle and start patient care, start a treatment, and get an ambulance on scene, and then get you transported.
One of the things that oftentimes comes up with summertime accidents, and it's, I guess we've talked about drownings and of course falls with playgrounds and children on playgrounds is a big issue. The one thing oftentimes that there's a lot of conversation about, and I don't know that we have that many, but snake bites always come up as a concern during the summertime. Is that something that you get calls about, and is that a critical part of maybe folks jump in the car and they'll go to the ER as opposed to calling? Talk to us about those issues.
Yeah, we get a few snake bite calls. Predominantly, I think probably the vast majority of the people, they get in their own vehicle and just go to the emergency room when they do get bit by a snake. I think one of the obviously the best thing you can do is just try to your situational awareness, which I know we all stick our hands or step somewhere that, stick our hand, we're trying to pull a weed out from a bush around our house. And, before you just stick your hand down there and grab that weed, you might want to take a little look and just be sure there's not a snake laying there or, something of that nature. But, we probably, I would guess probably the vast majority of the people with a snake bite just go personal vehicle to the emergency room. But we do occasionally get, from time to time, get a call with snake bite.
We're a community of people that encourage and appreciate sports and team play and that kind of thing. What do folks need to know, and particularly for those folks that are coaches out there? And we've talked to our recreation department heads and that kind of thing. Talk to us about the accident issues that folks need to think about in playing anything from softball to baseball to soccer, whatever it may be. Some of the things you've seen more that concerns you with accidents related to that.
I think with our sports-related injuries, I mean, obviously we're, all the time going to have that, sprained ankle, rolled ankle, potentially broke arm, broke leg, or somebody's fallen or whatever. But I think one of the biggest things with our sports-related injuries is concussions. There's been a real big push over the last 3-4 years or so with concussions, especially in high school sports, and not just football, but baseball, basketball, soccer, all of it. Concussions can be extremely dangerous and fatal if not taken care of properly, and so I think anytime we have a kid that gets hit in the head or falls and hits their head, we need to be cautious and evaluate that child for concussion. Especially I know the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, they've got some real stringent policies and procedures that coaches have to go by for any athlete that they have identified that has the potential to have a concussion. So that kid's got to be removed from that sport or from the game, from playing, and evaluated by a doctor. And if the doctor deems that, yes, you have had a concussion, then there's certain procedures and policies that the school, the athlete, and the school themselves have to follow and go by before that kid can ever get reintegrated into playing again. So concussions is probably one of the biggest things in sports-related injuries.
When we look at the concussion issue, a lot of the games that we see now, whether it's church-related, whether it's involved with the recreation department, that kind of thing, the folks, I want to kind of give some accolades to the coaches, the people that volunteer to be coaches and that kind of thing. Are there training programs that they go through? Or as we're sitting here today, what would you say to those coaches that may have some knowledge with sports? They might have played sports in high school, but now they're a coach. Somebody gets hit. What things do they need to know as to whether they need to call you guys? Do they need to take the child to the hospital? Does the parents need to take the child to the hospital? What's the severity of injury, and how do you know if it's severe?
Well, with concussions, obviously the more lethargic the person is, or dizzy or dazed or woozy, vomiting, throwing up. Obviously, if it's like that, it's pretty severe.
That's a big sign.
That's a big thing. And, obviously, we want to err on the side of caution, whether it's, calling 911 and getting the ambulance out there, or, if you're close enough, getting them straight on to the emergency room or whatever.
Better to be safe.
Right. Better to be safe than sorry. But at the same token, you may have that kid that comes off and is like, I got my bell rang there for just a second. And then, 30, 45 seconds later, he's like, okay, I'm feeling better now. Coach, I'm all right. We still need to take that serious.
Yeah.
And I think that's, one thing that our coaches have to understand. And I think especially in our high school sports, all the coaches that I've interacted with them, that kid is more important than any game that we may be trying to win.
Another area, and we got a couple of minutes left, and time goes fast when I have you on. So, but we got one of the things I wanted to touch on, and we're already seeing it. And in fact, just recently I saw on local news, children left in a vehicle. We're talking kids in a baby seat, small children, that's left in a vehicle, and heat-related issues. Are we still experiencing that, or has folks kind of got dialed into knowing that your baby's in the back seat, and it's kind of hard sometimes to imagine, but it still happens.
Yeah, it does happen, and we do experience it. Fortunately, I don't think we've had an incident of that nature in Sampson County anytime recently that I can remember anyway, but it is a nationwide problem. Fortunately, the automobile industry is taking that seriously and start making some of the newer vehicles with some bells and whistles and reminders. And a lot of people think, how do you forget your kid? But it's easy for people to get distracted. I was watching a video the other day on, I think it was like 91 degrees outside. The car doors were shut. They were doing a study on it. The window was cracked in the car, and in less than 10 minutes, it was 109 degrees in the car.
Wow.
And heat stroke in a kid, it can happen quickly. I'd encourage people, if you got kids in, car seats, what have you, put something in the back seat to help you remind, our phones, our cell phones, or your pocketbook, your purse, and like I said, I know people all the time, well, how do people forget their kids? Well, we all get busy and distracted, but, we're all grabbing that cell phone every 5-10 minutes, and if I reach and I don't have my cell phone, oh, shoot, it's in the backseat of the car, or maybe something as simple as, ask your daycare provider that, hey, if for some reason, my kid don't show up at daycare, you mind calling and checking on, because a lot of people, if mom is the one that's always in the habit of taking the kid to daycare, now all of a sudden today, dad's off from work and dad's going to take him tomorrow. Well, that's not dad's normal routine. So
easy to get distracted.
It's easy to get distracted with.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us today. We're coming up on the last few seconds here. You got about 10 seconds. Any last thing you want to touch?
I just appreciate you having us and appreciate you helping get our voice out there and making people aware of
All right. Thank you again for being with us and everything you do. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you again next week, and thank you for being with us today. And as always, stay in touch with us. We look forward to seeing you again right here, and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.